In this video, we'll explore 7 things you may not need to tell your family, not out of secrecy, but out of serenity. These aren't just tips. They're daily life lessons you've already lived, but maybe haven't named yet. And secret 6? Oh, that one's gold. It's the key to staying spiritual without becoming a walking sermon. It'll save you arguments and keep your grandkids coming back. So stay with us, like this video, and subscribe to help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers and keep making soulful, mischievous content just for you. Now take a deep breath, pour your tea, and let's begin quietly. Secret 1. You don't have to share how much you've changed your mind. AKA, yes, I used to think that. No, I don't anymore. Namaste. Here's a fun little spiritual truth that no one tells you about aging. You're allowed to change your mind. And more importantly, you don't have to keep explaining it to people who haven't caught up. Remember when you thought margarine was healthy? Or that you'd never own a smartphone? Or that polyester was a good idea? Okay, maybe just once. Or that being busy meant you were important? And now? You eat butter again. You FaceTime your grandkids, you wear soft cotton, and you know that resting is the new enlightenment. But here's the catch. When you tell people you've changed your views, they often look at you like you violated some personal constitution. You used to say meditation was nonsense. Yes, and now I meditate. That's called growth. You should try it. People, especially family, get attached to your former identities. The old you, the predictable you, the fixed you. But you, my friend, are a river. Let me introduce you to Walter. Walter used to be a hard-nosed, black coffee, conservative ex-military guy who thought yoga was for people who listened to whale sounds. Then one day, in a waiting room, he picked up a copy of The Power of Now, and something cracked open. Now he chants mantras, uses essential oils, and calls his houseplants his little teachers. And guess what? His kids still treat him like the guy who only trusts AM radio and thinks tofu is suspicious. Walter once told me, it's like they didn't get the memo that I've updated my software. And that's the thing. You're allowed to grow, soften, pivot, shift. Even at 90, especially at 90. Ram Dass was once a Harvard psychologist. Then he ate some mushrooms, moved to India, and became a spiritual teacher who wore flowing robes and taught love as the real curriculum. That's not a midlife crisis. That's a soul evolution. So when people say, but you used to think, you can smile, breathe, and say, yes, and then I learned something new. That's the beauty of later life. You realize you don't have to win arguments. You don't have to defend your past beliefs. You don't even have to be consistent, as long as you're honest. Changing your mind isn't weakness, it's wisdom wearing sneakers. So maybe you used to believe you had to be busy to be valuable. Now you know that presence is worth more than productivity. Maybe you thought forgiveness meant losing. Now you understand it's freedom. Maybe you used to be certain about life after death. Now you're just curious. And weirdly okay with not knowing. And here's the best part. You don't have to make a formal announcement every time your heart expands. Let them be confused, let them wonder, let them say, you've changed. You have. That's the point. Growth isn't a memo, it's a vibe. And your job isn't to explain yourself to the past. It's to keep blooming, even if someone else thinks it's out of character. Because guess what? You're not a character. You're a soul in motion. And that, my dear, is a secret worth keeping. Secret 2. Why you don't always have to share when you feel lonely. 18. You're never really alone, even when it feels like everyone's at Applebee's without you. Let's talk about loneliness. Not the kind where you're physically by yourself. Sometimes that's heaven. Sometimes silence and your favorite blanket are better company than the neighbor who tells you about her bunions every morning. No, I mean that other kind of loneliness. The kind that sneaks in when the phone doesn't ring. The kind that makes a long afternoon stretch out like a desert. The kind where you wonder, just a little, if anyone even noticed you've been quiet. It's a strange thing, isn't it? You can raise a family, build a life, be the glue that held generations together, and then at 75, 80, 85, find yourself staring at the same spot on the living room wall thinking, is this it? And maybe, just maybe, you want to say something. You want to call your kids and say, I'm lonely today. You want to tell your friends, it feels like the world's moving on without me. You want to whisper into the receiver, I just need someone to know I'm still here. And you can. Please hear me, you absolutely can. But you don't have to. Not every time, not always. Because here's the gentle truth. Some loneliness doesn't want to be fixed, it wants to be witnessed. Ram Dass once said, we're all just walking each other home. But sometimes the walk is quiet, and sometimes you walk alone for a bit. You don't have to tell your family every time you feel the ache of silence. Not because you're hiding, not because they wouldn't care, but because there's a sacredness to some feelings, a holiness, and if you hand them over too quickly, they can get misunderstood, or worse, diminished. You say, I felt lonely yesterday, and your daughter starts reciting self-help books and asking if you've tried puzzles. Your son texts you a podcast about senior community centers and suggests pickleball. Your grandchild sends you a gif of a cat hugging a potato, all well-meaning, all lovely. But not quite it. You weren't looking for solutions. You were just sharing your humanness. But here's the thing. You can do that without saying a word. Because loneliness is like a bell that rings through the heart. And when you sit with it, really sit, no distractions, it starts to shift. It softens. It opens up space. It becomes something else, something quieter, wiser, even connected. You begin to realize that what you're feeling isn't personal. It's not yours alone. It's the collective ache of being human in a world that moves fast and forgets slow love. It's the echo of every elder who's ever watched the door and wondered if someone would knock. It's the universal longing to be seen, even when the room is empty. And that, my dear, is holy ground. So what do? You breathe, you light a candle, you pour a cup of tea and talk to the sky or your younger self or the old soul in your dog's eyes. You write it down, you pray, you sit, and then, when and if the time feels right, you call someone. Not because you need them to fix you, but because you want to share a moment of truth. Because sometimes just saying, hey, I was thinking of you, is enough to stitch the world back together, one thread at a time. Here's what I know after all these years. You are never as alone as you feel. Not when you're awake, not when you're breathing, not when your heart still sings in quiet ways. Loneliness comes, and it goes. It's just another visitor at the table. Offer it tea, let it talk, and then when it's done, it'll stand up, thank you, and leave. And when it does, you'll still be here, still radiant, still part of the whole, still walking each other home, even if today you're walking in silence. Secret 3, health concerns that aren't urgent, or as I like to call it, don't turn a hangnail into a family summit. Let's be honest here. After 65, the body starts singing a few new tunes. Sometimes it's a soft creak in the knees. Other times, it's a mysterious noise in your shoulder that sounds like an old haunted door. And yes, some mornings you wake up and check the calendar just to confirm that you're still here. Spoiler alert, you are. But here's the kicker. Just because your body's sending out more signals doesn't mean you need to send every single one straight to the family group chat. You know what I'm talking about. You say something simple like, my back felt a little stiff this morning, and within 12 hours, your adult daughter has texted 6 articles, made an appointment with a chiropractor named Zane, and added you to a Facebook group called Spine Warriors Over 70. And suddenly, your quiet little backache has become a family emergency, complete with guilt, concern, and a strong recommendation to switch to oat milk. Now don't get me wrong. Family loves you. They mean well. They care. But there's a difference between sharing to connect and sharing to outsource your autonomy. You don't have to report every twinge, every skipped heartbeat, every moment you forgot why you walked into the room. We all know that dance. You walk in, forget why, then leave with a snack. Here's the Ramdas truth of it all. You are not your aching knee. You are not your cholesterol number. You are not even the MRI you got last fall. You're just awareness, wearing a slightly used body. And the funny thing is, the more we talk about our body breaking down, the more people start treating us like we're already broken. Let me tell you about Dolores, a wonderful woman from a meditation circle I used to attend in Santa Fe. She was 74, drove a classic green VW Bug, and had a laugh that could heal a small nation. One winter, she started telling her son about every ache, every bout of fatigue, every off day. By spring, he'd hired a part-time caregiver and was already looking into assisted living options. All Dolores had really wanted was someone to say, "That stinks. Do you want to come over and watch Jeopardy?" She pulled me aside one day and said, "I talked myself into a sick role I didn't even want. Now everyone's acting like I'm made of rice paper." And I said, "Dolores, next time you feel something, talk to your cat about it first. If she looks concerned, then maybe call your son." Here's the thing. When you share every bump in the road, you can unintentionally rewrite the story others tell themselves about you. Instead of being the same wise, funny, independent person you've always been, they start seeing a fragile version, a version that may not even exist. It's not about pretending you're fine. It's about being discerning. In Buddhism, we talk about skillful means. That means using your wisdom to decide how, when, and what to communicate for the highest benefit of everyone involved. If something is serious, of course you share. If it's a persistent health issue, yes, loop in your loved ones. But if it's just a passing cloud, maybe let it pass. Because here's what no one tells you. You get to protect your peace by not narrating every sensation. You get to keep your dignity by not inviting a whole panel of advisors every time your digestion feels a little off. You can smile, breathe, and say to yourself, "Ah, there's the body doing its thing again. Thank you, body. Carry on." And if your knee still hurts tomorrow, fine, take a hot bath, stretch a little, or do what I do. Put on some Miles Davis, lie down with a heating pad, and pretend you're at a jazz club in 1974. You don't owe anyone a symptom report. Because remember, you are not a collection of issues. You're a mystery. A beautiful, aging, slightly stiff mystery. And that mystery deserves privacy. So next time something creaks, instead of texting the kids, try saying, "Huh, interesting." Then make a cup of tea and keep going. Secret 4. Don't turn your bank account into a family bonding activity, aka the holy art of financial mystique. Ah, money. That old spiritual riddle wrapped in a credit card statement. If you're over 65, money is no longer about climbing ladders or chasing promotions. It's about freedom, comfort, the quiet joy of ordering dessert without looking at the price. Tiramisu? Yes. 2 spoons? No. But here's where it gets tricky. The moment you start explaining your finances to family, the vibe changes. You say, "I'm doing okay." They hear, "I have enough to help you with a down payment, tuition, or your startup idea involving alpaca wool." You say, "I've got a good system." They hear, "Please offer me financial advice, even though I've managed to survive 7 recessions and raised children on coupons and casserole." Now don't get me wrong, money itself isn't the issue. It's the expectations that sneak in once people think they have access to your spreadsheet. It's like showing people the kitchen during a dinner party. Suddenly they're judging the spice rack and suggesting how you should have sautéed the onions. Let me tell you about Irene. Irene, a retired jazz pianist, lived modestly but comfortably. One year, she decided to share her financial outlook with her adult sons, thinking it would reassure them she wouldn't be calling for rent money anytime soon. 3 weeks later, one son emailed her a 5-point plan to optimize her retirement yield. The other son said, "I'm so relieved. I thought you were going to need help soon." and her daughter-in-law texted her Zillow listings for 55-plus communities in Nevada. Irene just wanted to talk about her Roth IRA. Suddenly, everyone was talking about her exit strategy. She told me over coffee, I felt like I accidentally started the Hunger Games, but with annuities. Here's what I told her, and now I'll tell you. You don't owe your family a line item breakdown of your soul or your bank balance. You can be wise, you can be generous, but you don't have to explain how you're spending, what you've saved, or whether you still enjoy overpriced lattes at the bookstore cafe. In fact, there's great spiritual power in leaving a little mystery. The Buddha never said, "Thou shalt explain thy mutual funds." He said, right speech, right intention, right action. So here's what right financial speech might look like. Everything's handled. I'm comfortable, and I've made a plan. My needs are met, and I'll reach out if that ever changes. I'm enjoying my life. Please don't turn it into a pie chart. That's it. That's enough. And if someone presses, change the subject. Mention that you're thinking of buying a kayak. That'll really confuse them. Because here's the deeper truth. Your money isn't just money. It's your independence, your self-worth, your sacred, I've earned this energy. Guard it lovingly. Share it wisely. And don't let anyone turn your golden years into a group project. Unless they're pitching in on groceries. In that case, bless them and hand them the shopping list. Secret 5. Your true thoughts on family conflicts, aka don't be the guru at the family feud. Let me ask you something. Have you ever sat at a holiday dinner, fork midair, listening to your adult children argue about something absolutely insignificant? Say, who inherited grandma's gravy boat, or whether the family group chat should be on WhatsApp or text, and thought to yourself, if I open my mouth right now, I may never taste this mashed potato again in peace. Ah, yes. Welcome to the beautiful chaos of family. As you get older, something very peculiar starts to happen. People assume that because you've been around the longest, you must have the wisest opinion. And because you probably do, it gets very tempting to jump in and fix things, to clarify, to mediate, to drop a truth bomb like some kind of enlightened referee. But here's the hard-earned lesson. Just because you see clearly doesn't mean they're ready for the view. You see, when you're over 65, you've watched this movie before. Heck, you've starred in it, directed it, wrapped and edited the blooper reel. You know how these family dramas go. Someone says something passive-aggressive, someone else takes it personally, and suddenly Cousin Brenda's gluten-free lifestyle is a metaphor for betrayal. It's all so very predictable and a little ridiculous. But here's the secret Ramdas would want you to hear. You don't have to attend every conflict you're invited to, especially not in your own house. Take my friend Harold, who tried to mediate a squabble between his daughters about vacation plans. One wanted to go to the mountains, the other the beach. So Harold, wise sage that he is, gently suggested they compromise. Well, both daughters turned on him like synchronized swimmers of blame. You always take her side, one said. You never listen to me, said the other. Harold blinked, sipped his tea, and said, I think I'll go visit the mountains alone. The lesson? Even neutrality is risky in family politics. Why? Because when people are heated, your attempt to be helpful often lands as judgment. Or worse, alignment. And if there's anything family members have sharp radar for, it's whether you've picked a side. Here's the thing, Buddhism talks a lot about right intention and non-attachment. And nowhere is that practice harder or more necessary than in family conflict. You may feel like your opinion could heal everything. You might even be right. But healing doesn't happen through rightness. It happens through space, through time, through listening without needing to teach. So let me offer you a gentle mantra for these situations. That's not my karma to sort. Simple, soothing, and so true. Not every mess needs your mop. Not every storm needs your weather report. And certainly not every opinion needs to be voiced, especially when it's about people you love and want to stay close to. Because here's the dangerous trap. If you share your true thoughts about family conflicts, especially about people, they will remember. Even after the conflict cools, your comment might linger in their minds like a stubborn song lyric. You say, "I think your brother can be a little controlling." And years later, your daughter says, "Even Dad thought you were controlling." Boom. Family lore. Or you casually mention you never really liked your son-in-law's laugh. And suddenly you're the grumpy old parent who never approved of him. It sticks, because your words carry weight, heavy, multi-generational, gold-plated weight. So what do? You do what a wise old monk does when he sees two novices arguing over who makes the better rice. He smiles, he bows, he returns to his cushion. Maybe even eats a cookie. You say things like, "I trust you'll figure it out. You know your heart better than I do. I love you both too much to take sides." These are sacred phrases. They are your verbal incense, keeping the room fragrant even when things get a little smoky. And if you're still feeling like you need to speak your truth, do it in your journal, or whisper it to your dog, or better yet, bring it to your breath and let it dissolve. Because honestly, sometimes the greatest act of love is restraint. So let them sort out their own little wars. You've already earned your peace. You don't have to prove yourself, save the day, or play family therapist in your retirement years. You've graduated, and as Ram Dass might say, you're not here to fix your family. You're here to love them while you remember who you truly are. And that, my friend, is enough. Secret 6. When to keep your spiritual beliefs to yourself, aka, you don't have to enlighten the entire family tree. Let's talk about spiritual beliefs, shall we? You've been on quite a ride. Maybe you started off in the pews of a little church, wandered into a yoga class in the 70s, meditated your way through grief in the 90s, and now you're somewhere between all is one and past the remote. You've seen a lot, felt a lot, and maybe even touched the edge of the great mystery while watching a sunset or holding someone's hand as they left this world. And now, as the days slow down a little, you might feel the desire to share what you've learned with the people you love. Which is beautiful. But here's the rub. Not everyone wants to sit at your feet while you explain karma over dinner rolls. Sometimes sharing your spiritual path, especially with family, can backfire. Not because what you believe is wrong or weird, though let's be honest, if you've ever tried to explain reincarnation at a barbecue, it does get weird fast. But because people often hear your truth as a critique of their reality. You say, "I've learned that suffering is a doorway to awakening." They hear, "You're not spiritually evolved because you're still angry about the HOA fees." You say, "I've come to believe the soul continues after death." They hear, "You're wrong for not wanting to talk about Dad's will." You see the problem? As Ram Dass once put it, when you go out into the woods and you look at trees, you see all these different trees and you allow it, you appreciate it. The minute you get near humans, you lose all that. And you're constantly saying, "You're too this," or "I'm too that." Judgment. And we don't do that with trees. That's it right there. People are like spiritual trees. Some are pine, some are weeping willow, some are oddly shaped bonsais that smoke pot and quote Joe Rogan. It happens. You don't have to prune them, just love them. I met a woman once, let's call her Rita, who had found great peace in Tibetan Buddhism after a rocky health scare. Meditation, chanting, incense, the whole beautiful thing. She felt reborn. So naturally she wanted to share it with her adult kids. But her daughter was evangelical, her son was aggressively atheist, and her grandson thought Bodhisattva was a new Pokemon. Rita tried, gently at first, then with books, then with guided meditations over brunch. The result? Her kids started avoiding her like she was selling spiritual vacuum cleaners. They felt preached to, pressured, like they were disappointing her for not chanting Om Mani Padme Hum before breakfast. Rita came to me with tears in her eyes and said, "I just wanted them to feel what I feel." And I said, "But they are feeling what they feel. That's their path. Your job is to be the light, not the lighthouse keeper yelling, 'Turn here.' Because here's the truth. You don't have to share your beliefs to live them. Your peace will shine through in how you listen. Your faith will hum softly in the way you hug. Your presence will say more than your words ever could." Want to teach your family about compassion? Be deeply kind to them when they're annoying. Want to show them the power of letting go? Forgive the debt they owe you from last Christmas or 10 years ago. Want to offer spiritual wisdom? Pause before you speak. Smile. Let them talk. Because the deepest teachings are never in what we say. They're in what we are. So if your son rolls his eyes when you mention meditation, that's okay. If your daughter calls your Reiki healer that weird crystal lady, bless her anyway. You're not here to change their path. You're here to walk yours so gracefully that they might one day ask, "Hey, how are you so calm through all this?" And that's your moment. Not to preach, not to convert, just to smile and say, "It's a practice." Then pass the potatoes. Secret 7, your regrets about the past. Or as I like to call it, don't drag old baggage into the family room. Ah yes, regret. That fine vintage of memory we all sip now and then, usually while staring out a window or standing in the shower wondering where all the time went. By the time you hit 65, you've lived through enough chapters to look back and ask, "Wait, was that the plot twist or just poor judgment?" Let's face it, we've all got something. The job we didn't take, the words we didn't say, the vacation we canceled, the person we didn't marry, the person we did marry. And listen, I get it. Reflecting on the past is part of the spiritual path. You want to sit by the fire, pet your dog, and make peace with all those earlier versions of yourself who thought polyester bell-bottoms were a good idea. But, and this is important, you don't have to share every regret with your family. In fact, sometimes it's better if you don't. Let me explain. There's this illusion that honesty always equals connection. That if you tell your kids about the things you wish you'd have done differently, they'll feel closer to you. More bonded, more real. But here's the sneaky part. What you see as a quiet confession might sound like blame to their ears. You say, "I wish I hadn't worked so much when you were little." They hear, "You're the reason I missed out on my life." You say, "Sometimes I regret not moving to California." They hear, "I should have lived somewhere else without you." You say, "I never really found my purpose." They hear, "Raising you wasn't enough, even if you never meant it that way. Even if you were just trying to unburden your heart." But that's the thing about regret. It echoes differently in every room. And the people we love most are often the ones who hear it the loudest. My friend Eileen once told her daughter she regretted not going back to college. Simple truth, right? But her daughter, bless her sensitive heart, spiraled into a week-long guilt fest, convinced her mother had resented raising her. Eileen called me, flustered, saying, "I was just having a moment. I didn't mean to start a generational wound." So here's my suggestion. If you need to talk about your regrets, talk to someone who doesn't share your DNA. Talk to a friend, a therapist, a tree. A good tree can handle anything. Because there's a kind of regret that heals and a kind that haunts. And when you spill it carelessly, it can take root in someone else's garden. Now, let's bring in some Buddhist magic. In the Dharma, we talk about non-attachment. And that includes not clinging to old stories, especially the ones that keep you tangled in the past. Regret is a story, a seductive one. It says, "If only." But the truth is, if only never existed. The decisions you made back then, you made them with the tools, the awareness, and the karma you had at the time. That version of you did their best. And now this version of you is doing the same. So why dig up old pain and serve it to people who weren't even at the table when the meal was cooked? There's a beautiful moment in Be Here Now where Ram Dass says, Everything in your life is there as a vehicle for your transformation. Use it. That includes your regrets. Use them. Learn from them. But don't turn them into dinner conversation, because you're not here to explain your life. You're here to live it. Your family doesn't need to carry your old regrets like little emotional suitcases. They need to see you alive, present, curious, maybe even dancing a little in the kitchen when no one's watching. And if you must say something, say this: I've made mistakes, but I've also made beauty. I've grown, and I wouldn't trade this moment for anything. Let your regrets compost into wisdom. Let your past fuel your compassion. And let your family see you not as someone trying to rewrite the script, but as someone who's finally learned to love the whole damn play. Curtains up, friend. You're still on stage. So what did we learn today? That sometimes the kindest thing you can say is nothing at all. We don't need to announce every ache, defend every opinion, or report our bank balance like it's breaking news. Not because we're hiding, but because we've finally discovered the sacred power of privacy with purpose. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real freedom we were searching for all along. If this video made you chuckle, pause, or think, go ahead and like it. If it reminded you of someone you love, or someone who needs to zip it, share it with them. And if you've ever kept something to yourself and we're glad you did, tell us about it in the comments below. We're building a little sangha here at Buddhist Wisdom for the elderly, and your voice matters. Until next time, be kind, be curious, and if in doubt, just smile and sip your tea.